I did a thing. Anyways, we're gonna go into the fourth pillar of biblical masculinity this week. So, just a quick recap of the other three. The other two. Man was created to lead, work, and protect. Biblical masculinity reflects Christ's leadership. So, I won't take up too much time. I did listen to the other two episodes, and I know I said 20 to 30 minutes, and then I went for close to an hour. So this time I'm actually going to make an effort to try to keep it around 20 to 30 minutes. And one more thing was the practical action steps were oriented more towards men who are married and men who have kids. They're still going to do so, but I want to also include the people who are the men who are preparing for this stage of life who haven't gotten there yet. So without any further ado, let's get right into it.
I'll stand and fight for what I love and know is right. I'll carry on. I'll carry on.
This is the Watchmen, where men of God are forged for battle, with their senses sharpened by truth, hands trained for war, and hearts surrendered to the King. So this is the third episode. We've gotten 3 episodes deep so far. Hopefully, we have video throughout this entire episode. I have gone through a lot trying to get this camera to not die, so we're going to see what happens. But again, we're just starting out. We're starting out with what we have available to us, and we're doing the best with what we have. So, pillar number 3. We're going to get right into it to try to save on time here. Pillar number 3. Men are called to provide, defend, and bear burdens. So anybody who doesn't know scriptures or who let themselves be manipulated by modern media, let themselves be influenced by modern culture, by modern society, are going to say, "Oh, hey, you're just espousing traditional values. You're just pushing toxic masculinity." And to that, I pose a question: what are traditional values? What is toxic masculinity? A lot of them are going to give some just absolutely dumb and outrageous postmodernist, relative morality-based answer about how men and women are exactly the same and all this other garbage. And as we've explained, men and women are completely different in all aspects of life. There can be similarities, but they're not going to be the same. I've explained in previous episodes, if you're starting out at number 3 for some reason, I'd recommend you start with number 1, or at the very least start out with the 4-minute promotional vid. I'm going to call it a promotional vid that we made, so that you understand the purpose for the whole podcast in general, for this whole idea of getting this information out. Men and women are not completely, but men and women are built with different expressed purposes in mind. They have the same mission, but each one is meant to serve that mission in a unique way. The word for it is complementarianism, right? They complement one another. Where men are strong, women tend to be weak. And where women are strong, men tend to be weak. So it's important to have both sides of this equation going so that you have a full relationship, so that you have a full environment for the nurturing and admonition of kids, for bringing up the next generation, which is my effort here, is trying to bring up the next generation with the information that I don't want to say I lacked it, but I didn't have a focus on it. So the next generation of men, I don't want to say next generation of kids, those young men who are going to be the next generation of men, I want them to have that information so that they grow up with that information in mind and they don't struggle trying to put it all together and trying to put it into action when they're already in the stages where somebody else is dependent on them. So men are called to provide, defend, and bear burdens. Core scriptures. As we've done every single week, and we're going to continue to do so through the entire series, we're going to base everything off the scriptures. We're going to base everything off of the Bible, because if it's based on anything else, it is movable and it is not worth anything to us. Well, to me, if you're following, most likely to you as well. From there, we're going to go into what most modern media calls a deep dive. So we're actually going to break down, well, not break down, but walk through each of the scriptures and really talk about what it means about biblical masculinity, what it's talking about biblical masculinity. From there, we're going to go into today's standard, what modern culture, modern society tries to tell men to do, tries to get them to be, and then we're just going to go over again in a synthesized manner the biblical prescription of masculinity. And then we're going to end it off with a practical action step. So the first two episodes were very long, but it is because I was trying to lay down a foundation. I was trying to get at least the basis of the information down. And you're gonna see within the next handful of episodes that all of this is self-referencing. So some of the stuff that I'm going to get into now, is going to touch back on both pillars 1 and 2, and it's going to make everything kind of go along a little bit faster. So we'll see that here. So starting off with the core scriptures, 1 Timothy 5:8. But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So we have to really take that and really think about scriptures, really think about what it's trying to say, because that's very severe. It's a very severe admonition. Nehemiah 4:14. One of the things that really got me started with getting this whole production out. Do not be afraid. Fight for your brothers. Fight for your sons. Fight for your daughters. Fight for your wives. Fight for your homes. So we're going to move right into the deep dive. And you'll see why I'm saying this is self-referencing here in a second. Biblical masculinity does not allow for passivity. Biblical masculinity does not allow for passivity. Where in previous conversations have we talked about passivity? We talked about passivity when it came to Adam. That was one of the primary issues in the Garden of Eden. That was one of the primary issues that brought the fall, was man's passivity. He was called to work and to keep. Yet he didn't keep his garden free from intruders. He didn't keep his wife safe from the serpent. He didn't keep the commandments that the God of the universe, the God of the Garden of Eden, gave to him. What happened? He was passive as the serpent was talking to the people he was put in charge of. The word is clear. Provision, defense, and burden bearing are not just cultural ideals. They are spiritual mandates. Provision, defense, and burden bearing are spiritual mandates. We are called to bear the image of Christ. And that isn't just in a physical sense. That isn't just being image bearers in the sense of, we look like God. No, what it means, the image bearers, is to present ourselves the way He did. In John 1, it talks about the Word becoming flesh within us. And what does that mean? It means that as we're learning, as we're reading Scripture, as we're trying to figure out this whole thing called life, we do so with the rule book that the person, that the being that created life gave us. And what we do is we don't just read and have information in our minds. It says the Word has to become flesh. It has to become a part of us. It has to take over the way we think, the way we operate. That's why the Apostle Paul says it's no longer I who live for myself, but Christ who lives in me. I have to crucify the flesh every single day. So provision. It's talking about, 1 Timothy is talking about providing. Those who do not provide for their household is worse than an unbeliever. Defense. Nehemiah It's talking about fighting for your wives, fighting for your sons, fighting for your daughters, and fighting for your homes. We talked about in a previous pillar how biblical masculinity is a cultivator. It captures chaos and cultivates order. That is what we are called to do. So if there is chaos and you cultivate order, that isn't a passive thing. You don't just hope it kind of just fixes itself. You have to actively go and you have to fight against evil. You have to fight against disorder and establish order the way God intended it to be. In burden bearing, we talked about the ultimate burden to bear and the example that was given in doing so. We talked about how Christ bore the burden of all of humanity's sin over his shoulders. And he gave that example to us as to how we as men are supposed to bear burdens honorably. In 1 Timothy 5:8, Paul issues one of the strongest rebukes in the New Testament. If a man refuses to provide for his household, he has denied the faith. This isn't about wealth, but about responsibility. A man may not have much, but what he does have, he uses to sustain and serve those God has entrusted to him. Provision includes financial care, emotional stability, spiritual leadership, and consistency. I have been a witness that a lot of men think that being the head of the household means only to provide a paycheck to their family. And I've had men later on, after they turn to Christianity, and then a couple of years down the road, they tell me, hey, here's something I learned. I learned that it's not just about the paycheck. And I understand this already, so I asked them, oh, what do you mean? Well, I thought that just going to work every single morning and working all day and giving my family, giving my wife, giving my kids everything that I never had as when I was a kid was what I needed to do. In a lot of modern cultures, especially our culture, if you know who I'm talking about, a lot of the time it's provision is seen only as a financial thing. So if you think about our older generations, you get a lot of men who went to work every single day. They gave enough money, not all the money. They gave enough money to their family and their kids, and then they went and spent the excess. A lot of the time they drank it. That's only a part of this. That's only a part of the equation. That's only a part of the responsibilities that we are called to uptake. Emotional stability is one of them. What kind of emotional stability you're providing for your household if you come back completely incoherent because you drank the rest of the money that you didn't give to your family? There's no emotional or mental stability there. What kind of emotional or mental stability you're going to give your family if you go out and you binge the rest of your money? You stuff your face hole with anything that you can get with the rest of that money. If it was just about money, you'd be doing completely fine, but that is not what we're called to do. We're called to provide, in general, provide provision. We're also called to spiritual leadership. That's one of the big ones. In our modern culture, in our modern society, it's super easy to go to church on Sundays, and in our case on Wednesdays as well. Go 2 times a week and try to get a Sunday school teacher or the kids class, kids ministry, to teach your kids for you. And that is not the commandment that God has given us. Yes, he said you will repeat these commandments to your kids and to your children's children. We are called to minister spiritually 2 generations in. And what does spiritual leadership mean? Does it mean that we know every single small little detail about the Bible? Ideally, but that is not spiritual leadership. Bible trivia is not spiritual leadership. Knowing how many books are on the Bible is not spiritual leadership. In my case, my wife knows more Bible trivia than I do. You'd have to ask her to verify. But I'd like to say that I'm the spiritual leader. Sometimes she asks me about something. Hey, I read this portion, or in this person, like this specific king was talking about this specific person and kind of made this commandment. Why did he do that? And I'm like, hold on. First of all, I suck at names. Like you give me a name, I'm most likely going to forget. But if you tell me where it is and you give me the context of what's going on, oh yeah, I know that story. I just forgot this freaking guy's name. If I don't know it, I'm like, okay, where does it say? Like, give me a second to read it. I read it really quick, and then I give an explanation. Oh, it's talking about this specific verse is in context with the rest of the chapter where it's talking about this specific subject. And it might seem confusing if you just read it on its own, but when you take it into consideration with the rest of the subject, it's talking about this, and this. Why? Because I can do this because I have delved into scriptures. I understand not only what the verse is saying, I understand the message that the Bible in its entirety is trying to portray. I know my God. I have seen him. And I live every single day trying to deny myself, deny my flesh, and having that word become flesh in me. So that when the time comes when I'm face to face to him, I can tell him, I know you. Primarily for that reason, so that when we meet face to face, I can tell him, I know you. And in the hopes that he will return that same wording and tell me, I know you. And in doing so, in trying to get myself there, one of the things that I have to do is I have to lead my home spiritually. And in living in a way where where I have that as my ultimate goal, I am prepared to lead my home spiritually. Or when I get asked a question, when I get asked to clarify something, even if I might have forgotten the small, trivial details of a story, I can read it really quickly and go, oh yeah, this is what it's talking about. And also lead my family in a way where they can also say, I know you, Lord. That is spiritual leadership. Having that direct relationship with God and being able to lead others to do so as well. Does that mean I go to 6 different Bible studies every single week? No. I don't remember where I heard it, but I heard someone say, boys consume, men provide. If you are going and consuming at 6 or 7 or 8 different Bible studies every single week, you're still a spiritual boy. There's nothing wrong with it. Everyone comes to the faith at a different portion in their time. But when you change from only taking to starting to provide for others, when you make that switch from only consuming to starting to give, that is when you make that switch from boy to man. Think about it in any situation. That is what differentiates a boy from a man. A boy consumes, a man provides. Provision. And he who does not provide for his household is worse than an unbeliever. And what does it say? Worse than an unbeliever. He has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Well, how many of us have actually thought about this particular subject, about provision in its entirety? Not only provision financially, but provision emotionally, provision mentally, provision spiritually. And not only that, but if you do this once a year, that is not, sure, you're providing emotional, mental stability, you're providing financial stability, you're providing spiritual stability. But if you do it once a year or once every 3 weeks, once every 3 months, that's completely, I don't want to say completely worthless, that's almost completely worthless. One of the things you have to provide as a man is consistency. When providing a practical action step, I tell you, take this step. Do something small. Not for just don't do something big just to try to fulfill the step and just be done with it. What you're supposed to do is do something small that you can replicate every single day. Because consistency is what gets you from trying to be something to creating a lifestyle of it. Nehemiah 4:14 reminds us that defense is not just metaphorical. It is physical, spiritual, and emotional. When Jerusalem's walls were broken, the men were told to arm themselves, to build with one hand and fight with another. That is the posture of a godly man, always ready to build and to battle. As modern men, as modern Christians, we are erroneously taught that tolerance is a biblical virtue, and it is not. In fact, in the few instances where, again, going back to being image bearers of Christ, having Him form us to His image, form us to His being, in the few instances where it does talk about God being tolerant, it is not, well, not being tolerant, but God tolerating something, it is not in a good light. It is not positive. And when it talks about the church or his people of Israel throughout history tolerating someone, it's not in a good manner. The prophet's always rebuking, saying, because you tolerated these people, that's why you're being castigated. As modern Christians, we do not hate evil enough. We're called to be ready to build and to be ready to battle. In order to build something, you have to clear out an area. Prepare the way. John the Baptizer, he was somebody who was building and battling. Maybe not physically, but he said, prepare the way for the Lord. I am he who calls from the desert, calling, prepare the way for the Lord. What did that mean? It meant going out and not only just rebuking people for the sake of making them feel bad, but calling them to repentance. And those who heard his words and those who followed his advice, mercy was given to them. But to those who refused, generation of vipers, who taught you to flee from the coming wrath, hating evil, fighting, build in battle. We are told to build with one hand, fight with the other. Adam was charged with working, or abad, and keeping Shema. Serve, labor, and cultivate, and to guard, watch, and protect. Can we as men protect anything if we are not willing to fight against what is causing us to have to protect? You can't. We're called to active defense of those put under our care. Provision. If we are to provide stability in every area of life, we are called to defend that as well. Consistency is one of the things that we have to be able to provide, and you can't provide consistency if any random thing can sneak into our garden and start speaking eloquently to our wives and our kids, forcing them to doubt the words of the Creator. Now, doubt isn't inherently bad. It leads us to dive deeper into questions that we had. But when that doubt pushes us to be disobedient to the commandments of God because they were placed in our heads by an external source. That is when it's a stumbling block. Fight for your brothers. Fight for your sons. Fight for your daughters. Fight for your wives. Fight for your homes. Bearing burdens also means stepping into the pain of others. Your wife's anxiety. Your children's doubts. Your brother's crisis. Masculinity doesn't retreat from weight. It welcomes it and shoulders it with Christ-like strength. Let the word become flesh in you. Bear the image of Christ. Live as he lived. And how did he live? Sacrificial leadership. We talked about in the last pillar how biblical masculinity reflects Christ's leadership. He didn't lead by yelling at us from his throne. He led by coming to earth and dying for us, bearing our burdens. Biblical masculinity bears burdens. We are built for that. I was talking to somebody. I've said this several times. I've said this to a few people. Where they start talking and saying, "Hey, I want to start actually doing things. I want to start actually getting my life together." And every single time I've told them to do it. You know the way. You just have to walk it. Oh, but it's really difficult. It is. I'm not going to take that away. Following Christ is very simple. Just follow his commandments and live according to them. Super simple. But it's exceedingly hard because it goes against our nature. But something that I read a while ago that has stuck with me. Oh, what a blessing it is to be exhausted from living in pursuit of the purpose God has placed in front of you. There are nights when I'm trying to read and I can't. I can't keep my eyes open. And that's all I can think. Oh, what a blessing it is to be exhausted in the pursuit of the purpose God has placed in front of you. So men were built for bearing burdens. If you look at any man who is spiraling, who has no direction, typically he is somebody who does not have burdens to bear. He has them around him, but he does not bear his burdens. Build with one hand, fight with the other. Work and to keep. To work to cultivate the environment where your family can flourish. And to keep, to protect that environment. And to fight off anything that's will is to destroy it. Bearing burdens. Christ-like leadership. This is better encapsulated in the second pillar. So if you haven't listened to it, I'd recommend you go back and watch that one. Where it talks about servant leadership. It talks about what it means to bear burdens. Today's standard. Culture idolizes comfort and shirks responsibility. Men are encouraged to prioritize their own mental peace over the needs of others. Protection is outsourced, and provision is often associated only with money, if it's prioritized at all. So modern culture, modern society pushes men to idolize comfort over responsibility. It goes back to those men who have no burden to bear. Take a look at modern statistics. Young men are less likely, extremely less likely to get married nowadays. Now, what do I mean with getting married? Of course, do everything right, do everything legally, do it like all that kind of stuff, but they're not willing to commit to somebody to provide for them, to lead them, to protect them, to defend them. They are unwilling to bear that burden. They are unwilling to take on that responsibility. And what do other people say? Oh yeah, you do you, bro. That's wrong. You are built with a purpose, and you are negating it. Provision is outsourced. Protection is outsourced. This is a really big one in the gun control, the Second Amendment debate. Oh, if someone breaks in, just call the cops. You don't need a gun. I think the national average response time is like 7 minutes. Cool. Now what? There's a serpent in your garden. You have to wait 7 minutes? Are the police bad? No. The service was placed for a reason. It was set up for a reason. But that is secondary. We are the primary cultivators of safety in our home. We provide safety in our home. We provide emotional and mental stability. And if we're called to protect, to provide, in all aspects provide, and also defend our homes, then we are the ones that have to protect and defend our home primarily. And what's the biggest flaw I see nowadays, especially within Christianity? For some reason, especially within Christianity, what is the biggest flaw that I see? Everyone looks like a ball of lard. Oh yeah, I'm in shape, dude. Circle's also a shape. That's stupid. You are negating the aspect of providing safety and defending your home. If you get winded going up a flight of stairs, how are you going to fight for your family? You can't. You can't. We're extremely comfortable calling out all other sins, but when we start talking about money, we start talking about people's food, people get really defensive about it. Stop it. You have a food addiction. You're falling into gluttony. Stop it. Repent. Biblical contrast. A man who doesn't provide is worse than an unbeliever. Men are built to carry weight, defend your household, bear spiritual, emotional, and physical burdens. Nehemiah rallied men to fight for their families, not retreat to personal comfort. If you can't provide defense as a Christian, physical, emotional, spiritual, you are denying the faith. And you are worse than an unbeliever. Think about that. Think about what I just said. If you can't defend your family, you're worse than an unbeliever. If you can't provide for your family, you're worse than an unbeliever. Now, physical, spiritual, emotional. Provide, defend. In each one of those. Provide spiritually. Be the spiritual leader. Provide financially. Be the worker. Sacrificial leadership. Provide emotionally. Create peace. Establish peace. Cultivate peace in your home. How do you do that? You have to create. You have to build. Build this environment. Build in every single one of these aspects. Build in every single one of these areas. But do you just build and leave it there? No. When you build a city, you build a wall around it to protect it. You build borders and then you watch to see that there's nobody who's wanting to destroy what you've built coming in. Build with one hand, destroy with the other. What are we destroying? We're destroying evil. We're destroying wickedness. We're destroying sin. Build for your family. Build with your family with one hand. With the other hand, destroy for their sake. Defend them physically. Defend them spiritually. I have been woken in the middle of the night. Adrenaline racing for no apparent reason. I am aware of spiritual warfare. So in that moment, I start praying over my family. Defend them spiritually. Again, I'm not saying I'm perfect. Scripture talks about God choosing the lowest and the most wretched to shame the wise men of this world. That's who I am. I'm a nobody. I'm not special. But God has called me and I have put in the work. I have bore my responsibility. I have placed it over my shoulders because that's what I've been called to do. And every man should have that attitude. I've been called to bear this responsibility. So as much as my flesh at 3 a.m. is tired and wants to go back to sleep and wants to ignore what's going on, I cannot. So I start praying over my family. Until when? Until I can't any longer. Or until the threat is gone. Whichever comes first. Fight for your homes. Fight for your families. There's a lot of men who are allowing demonic influences into their own home. You're destroying your own city. You're turning the hand with the sword against those who you are called to protect. Provision and defense. Work and to keep. That's part of the first pillar. Nehemiah rallied men to fight for their families, not retreat to personal comfort. Bear your responsibility honorably. Practical action step. Finishing this one off. Do a responsibility audit. Take time this week to list out the people and areas God has entrusted in your care. This could be various areas: family, workplace, community, or church. Then, in these areas, ask yourself these 3 questions. Am I providing what they need from me? Where am I retreating instead of stepping up? The third one is, who needs to see me fight for them this week? Then make a call and act. Have a hard conversation if necessary. Or even just show up. So the 3 questions: am I providing what they need from me? If you are the head of a household, this starts primarily with your family, with your wife, with your kids. If you are not, if you are single, just look to a community that you are a part of. It could be at work. It could be just in your general community, a group of friends, a group of neighbors. Or it could be in the church. Am I providing what they need from me? As the head of a household, we've talked about provision and defense. We've given examples of what it means to provide and defend. If you are not married yet, start preparing yourself to do so. Start diving into Scripture. Start readying yourself spiritually. Start readying yourself emotionally. Start readying yourself mentally so that you could be a rock that bears a burden. So that when the wind blows and the tempests come, the house built over your shoulders does not fall. Don't be sand. Be a rock. If you don't have the responsibility of providing for somebody else yet, start preparing. Physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially. The big debate over a living wage has started to fade away. And it goes, we can dive into that with this as well. Where if you are stuck as the head of a household, making entry-level wages, that is your own fault for making decisions that put you there. I hear people say, you can't support a family on minimum wage. Well, that's not what it's meant for. Minimum wage is to get people started in something. Get people started working. And then from there, starting developing skills that they can then get higher wages for. If you're stuck as the head of a household making minimum wage, you messed up long before. So if you're young now, start working. Because that's what you've been called to do. Start working. Start developing your skills. Start developing your mind. So that when you get to a point where you are looking for somebody to start a home with, you have monetizable skills. You have monetizable knowledge. You're not just stuck. Do everything you can to set yourself up. Am I providing what they need? Where am I retreating instead of stepping up? That's the second question. A lot of people retreat in that sense. Instead of getting better to get paid better, they just complain and they go somewhere else and restart the entire process. They believe they deserve more just because they exist. Now, on the married side of things, it's extremely common for men to retreat when things get emotionally unstable. Extremely common. I don't have proof of this, but I believe it's why the surging of the man cave happened. Now, I guess I technically have a man cave, but it's not for the purpose of retreating away from things. It's for the purpose of leveling up so I can step up. So that when things get difficult, I'm prepared and I'm ready. Again, I'm not anything special. Who needs to see me fight for them this week? The example that I'm most proud of about fighting for my family, because it's one of the most tangible ones, is when my wife was pregnant. Both times. She's a trooper. She went completely natural with both kids. So we went to see a midwife. We had appointments set up every spaced out over a specific period of time, and then as the pregnancy progressed, it started becoming shorter and shorter. I made it to every single one of those appointments. Now, I'm fortunate enough to run my own business. So I can control my schedule a little bit. There were times when I was working, and then I went to the place and I waited for her there. We went through the appointment, and then I went right back to work. I got home later that day, but I made it and I showed up. And I showed her that I'm willing to fight for that. For both girls, I did this. Because my family comes first. Now that is the one I'm personally the most proud of. It's something small, something seemingly small. But can you imagine? You put yourself in the shoes, in her shoes. The emotional and mental stability that will bring. Of seeing the person that says they will fight for you make it to every single one of those appointments. So as somebody who's not married, somebody who doesn't have kids, somebody who's not in this stage of life, somebody who's younger, who needs to see you fight for them? Is it your brother? Is it your spiritual brother? Your blood brother? Talk to them. Send them a quick text. Send them a message. Saying, dude, I'm praying for you. I want you to start walking in the way of the Lord. If you need anything, just let me know. I'll be here. Is another man in your life that you see is struggling? Coming to the realization that he's neglected his purpose in life, that he's neglected his responsibilities. Reach out to them. Man, there's still time. There is still time for you to bear your burdens. Seek the Lord while he can still be found. Fight for those around you. So as men, we are called to provide, to defend, and to bear burdens. The burden of being the head of the house is a heavy one. So we are called to sacrificial leadership. We're called to provide in every aspect of life. and then to defend what we have cultivated. Work and keep. Build with one hand, defend with the other. Bring stuff up and cut stuff down. That is our calling. That is our purpose. That is pillar number 3. Next week we'll get into pillar number 4, and I think that one will go by a lot quicker, just because we're going to be referencing pillar number 2 a lot. So if you haven't listened, if you started on number 3 for some reason, go back and listen to number 1 and number 2, because the next one is really going to be, it's going to be self-referencing to number 2 a lot, quite a bit, because it has a lot of similar principles, but it's stuff that we have to take into account individually. So with that, you have the information, you have your marching orders. Stay awake, stay faithful, stand your post. This is the Watchmen.